Hello everyone. In this session, we will understand what is typecasting in Python. Typecasting is a process of converting data type of a variable. For example, the data present in a variable is in integer. We want to convert it to float, or if the data is in string data type and we want to convert it into integer. For such cases, typecasting is needed in Python. Now, there are two types of typecasting possible. One is implicit typecasting, another is explicit typecasting. In case of implicit typecasting, Python does the typecasting or the conversion of data type by itself. Programmer do not have to do anything in case of implicit typecasting. Whereas in case of explicit typecasting, programmer has to take care of the type conversion. Let's start with implicit typecasting and try to understand what is happening in Python when it is performing implicit typecasting. For example, we have two variables, num1 has 5 and num2 has 5.25. Now, if we are going to sum them, at that time, what Python does, Python internally converts this integer to 5.0, which is in float, and then performs the sum operation. Why? Because the sum operation can only be performed if both the data types are exactly same. Now, initially, if you see in num1, we have assigned 5 in it. So that means it's an integer, not a float. Whereas num2 is a type of float. Plus operator cannot perform this action because the data types for these two variables are different. That's the reason Python performs implicit typecasting before doing this sum operation. What will be the answer in this? It will be 10.25. In case of explicit typecasting, programmer has to take care of the typecasting. It's a programmer driven typecasting. Let's understand with an example. We can take some input during runtime from the user by using this function called input. If input function basically takes a value from user via console. Now user can provide 5 here. In case of num2, user can provide 5.25. What will be the sum? This input function always returns the value as a string. Though we are entering 5 via console, this 5 will come as a string. So num1, type of num1 will be a string. Similarly, type of num2 will also be a string. This is the property of this input function. Always input function provides us the string even though we are inserting integer or float value. Now this sum will give you, instead of 10.25, it will give you 55.25. Why? Because instead of adding them together, it will append them, because both num1 and num2 are of string. That's the reason print sum will give you 55.25 instead of 10.25. To solve this situation, what programmer have to do? Programmer have to explicitly typecast the variables. In this case, we are converting this string to a float. That means what? Now sum will store 10.25 because now both will be float, and then if we do addition between two float numbers, it will provide you the correct result of 10.25. So when we will be printing the sum, we will see 10.25. This is the main reason why we need typecasting. There are a number of functions present in Python for typecasting. Int, float, string are the most important functions through which we can perform typecasting. What is the syntax to convert one data type to other? The new variable will store the required type, and var source can be of any type. For example, in this case, var int, if we want to convert a string into an int, then we can write var int equal to the function int and then num1, which is a string or str type. If you are facing some difficulties to understand what is int, what is string, and all these data types, I have one video where I have explained all the data types of Python in detail. You can watch that video to know more. Let's summarize what we have learned so far. Typecasting is a process of converting one data type to other. There are two different types of typecasting possible in Python. One is implicit typecasting, another is explicit typecasting. In case of implicit typecasting, Python does this typecasting by itself. Programmer don't have to think about it. In some cases where we are trying to add two different numbers, two different type of numbers, one is in integer, one is in float, Python automatically converts it to the higher data type. That means if we have one integer and one float, it will convert the integer to float. If we convert the other way around, from higher data type to lower data type, then there will be a chance of data loss. For example, if we want to convert this float into integer, it will give you 5 instead of 5.25. So we are losing the data. That's the reason Python always converts from lower data type to higher data type, so that there will be no chance of any data loss. On the other hand, in case of explicit typecasting, it's not Python but programmer driven. Programmer has to take care of this conversion. We have seen one function called input to take the input from user through console, and we also understood that it always returns a string instead of a number, even though we are putting some number in it. We have understood what is the problem with this function and how can we solve it using explicit typecasting. There are a number of functions which converts one data type to other in Python programming. We also saw the syntax where we will create a target variable and the target data type in this function, so that it converts any data type to the target data type and returns it or save it within a target variable. Let's see it in PyCharm. I have created one Python file called tutorial4 for this purpose, where we will be discussing about typecasting. We will concentrate here mainly on explicit typecasting because that is the thing as a programmer we have to learn. Here what I have done, I have created two variables num1 and num2, used input. Input function is used to take input from user, and then if we sum them together, we will see how incorrect sum is coming, because all these num1 and num2 are nothing but string, and that is the reason this plus symbol will not add them together. Instead, they will be appended, and that's the reason in second case we have typecasted it with float, so that even though the num1 is in string, it will be converted into float and return the correct result. Let me run this program. It's asking for a new value. Let me provide 5. In other case, let me provide 5.25. We are entering two different values. So basically these two values will be stored within num1 and num2 in string format. And that's the reason if you see the incorrect result is 55.25. Why? Because instead of adding them together, it is appending them together. In the second case, when we have done the explicit typecasting, it is giving us the correct result. One point to note is, if we provide some wrong inputs, for example, we are asking user to enter inputs, right? So user can provide ABC as well. In such cases, this float will not work. Python will tell that whatever value you have provided in num1, I cannot convert it into float. So user has to be intelligent enough to provide exact value such a way that it can be converted into float by Python. Let me show you what I have just explained. Let's run this again. Instead of 5, 10 and all these things, let me write Bangalore, Karnataka. If we put this, you can see there is some error. In this case, it worked fine. Why? Because it's taking two different strings and appending them side by side. That's the reason you can see Bangalore, Karnataka here. But in second case, when we are performing the explicit typecasting, it has failed. Let's understand what is the error. It's telling could not convert string to float Bangalore. So it's telling indirectly to you that Bangalore cannot be converted into a float number. Thank you for watching this video.